Welcome to Table for One. I'm the narrator, and in today's video, we're going to be playing the solo tutorial of Voidfall. I've already got one video on this using House Dunlork, but in this video, I'm going to play the solo tutorial with a little bit of an extra challenge. Let's get rolling. Alright, so I'm all set up to play the solo tutorial of Voidfall. I'm using House Valnis. As I mentioned, I've already done a solo playthrough of the tutorial. You can find a link in the description. I'll also mention up front that there's going to be some components that I'm using, such as all the tokens up here, these boards over here, some other pieces that you may see that are not standard to the game. Those are from the Etsy store that I co-own, so there's a link in the description there as well, so I won't labor that point. The last thing that I want to say before I start, which is always the case on this channel, but I always forget to mention it, there are chapter markers, so if you're looking for something specific, feel free to jump through there. So if you are new to Voidfall and you just kind of want to see what this is about, this is a good place to start. I'm not going to go through all the rules. I'm not going to explain how to play in detail. I'm going to move through this kind of quick, but I'm going to play the solo tutorial so you can kind of see what it's all about. And because I've done this once before on this channel using House Dunlork, I don't remember if I named the house, but I used Dunlork before. I'm using Valnis now to make this a little more interesting. I've set an arbitrary restriction on myself. I am not going to leave these two starting sectors. This is my home sector. This is the outpost. I'm not going to take any of these other sectors for the rest of the tutorial. I'm going to try and achieve the 120 influence points that you need by the end, just in the two starting sectors. So hopefully that will encourage a little bit more thinking or a little bit more creativity in how I play through this time. I've got all the tutorial texts up here, and I randomly picked 3 that don't have the +4 influence. So that's going to be Dreadnoughts, Decontamination Chambers, and Neural Matrix. And then of course I start with shields. The improved version is here. I've already done the whole setup, so I've got my starting resources set. So let's get going. We're going to take a look at this first galactic event called From the Ashes. We're going to have 3 turns this cycle. So first you're supposed to read the tutorial, so do that. Then we're going to discard the following focus cards: Conquest, Politics, Progress, Prosperity, and Temptation. And because this is cycle 1, we also always discard Innovation. That's only going to leave us with 3 focus cards: Development, Production, and Reinforcement. Now, as I mentioned, there's 3 turns in this cycle, so we are going to play all 3 cards. The puzzle for us is just to determine what order do we want to play these 3 cards in. The next box here says move the corruption from your player mat onto your outpost sector. So we're going to take this starting corruption from here and corrupt this sector. There we go. And now we can take the first turn. And we do want to achieve by the end of these 3 turns at least one of these 2 galactic events. So we'll get a bonus if we have 5 or more fleet power on the map. Right now we have 4. Or we'll gain a bonus if we have 5 or more pure guilds on the map. So we'll try and achieve at least one of those. Now, a couple things to note. When we look at these 3 cards that we do have in our hand, none of them will get us a agenda. What we can do is we can move the society track up once here, and we can move any track up once here. So if we look at the first spaces on all 3, and then the second space on society, again, none of these will get us an agenda. So agendas are not going to happen in this first cycle of the tutorial. So all we can work towards is our starting agenda. And I believe for all the 4 basic houses, the A agenda is the same. You get 3 points or 3 influence for each peer sector. We get 1 influence for each peer sector with at least 1 sector defense, and we get 2 influence for each peer sector with at least 1 shipyard. So today I'm going to start with development, and I'm going to take this top action grow first. So I'm going to spend 1 material, so I go from 2 down to 1, to place either a guild or an installation. And so I'm going to choose to place a guild. It's going to be a scientist guild, and it's going to go there in my home sector. So now the level of my science production goes up by 2 because the population is 2, which brings the yield to 1. So if I were to produce science, I would get 1 science. So that was my first action. The second action is this middle one I'm going to take. It's called Settle. I need to recall 1 fleet power from a sector. So I'm going to recall that one. And from that sector, or in that same sector, I can now build a guild and an installation. So for the guild, I'm going to go with a food or a farmer's guild. So this level goes up by 2. Now I already have 2 because of this guild here. So this is going to go up to 4, which brings my yield up to 3 if I were to produce food. And for the installation, I'm going to build a shipyard. So that was 2 actions. That's the end of this focus card. So we go to the cleanup stage. We make sure that we don't have more than 2 fleet tokens on any one sector, which we don't. That we don't have more than 4 glory tokens, which we don't. We take care of slotting agendas, trade tokens, all that sort of cleanup stuff. We're good to go. So we can move on to the second focus card of this galactic cycle. And I'm going to play production next. I'm going to start with this bottom action, which is optimize. So I'm going to pay 1 food and 1 material. So my food goes from 4 to 3. And 1 energy. My energy goes from 2 to 1. And now I can remove 1 corruption, which I will. I'll take this corruption out of my outpost sector. So that's been purified. And I can regroup, so I can move up to 5 fleet power around. And I will. I'm going to move these 2 into this sector. So that counts as 2 movements. Each cubed moved 1 sector. I could move up to 3 more times, but I don't want to. Now, the reason I did that was because the home sector can never be invaded or taken over by the Voidborn or lost for any reason. The die in that sector matches my player color, so there's always something of my player color in that sector. I can never abandon it or lose it. So I want to beef up this sector here, because if anything's going to be attacked, it'll be that one. And for my second action, for free, I could take either of these. Now, Thrive would let me move up on the society track by 1 space and get me 1 credit and 1 science. But if I do supply, I can produce food, energy, and material and gain some influence. And I think that's going to be the better option. So I'm going to do supply. So I'm going to produce food. My yield is 3. So my stockpile goes from 3 to 6. My yield on energy is 2. So my stockpile goes from 1 to 3. And my yield on materials is 1, so my stockpile goes from 1 to 2. Now I gain 1 influence for each of those types of guilds that is in a pure sector. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. The science guild does not count because that was not one of the ones that we were just looking at. So now I'm going to gain 4 influence. So I go from 10, which is where you start, up to 14. And again, that was 2 actions off of that focus card. That's the end of this focus phase. So I've got 1 more turn to play. And I'm going to play Reinforcement. And I'm going to take the top action first, Accelerate. So I'm going to deactivate 1 fleet power in order to advance a track and build 1 sector defense. I'm going to build the sector defense. I'm going to put that there. And now I get to advance 1 track. And in this case, I think it's going to be this statecraft track here, which then allows me to activate 1 fleet power. So I essentially got this whole action at no cost. Now, the reason I picked statecraft is because I kind of want this tech, so I'd like to start moving in that direction later, and then an agenda after that tech would be very nice if I could get there. I do want this trade token, but I expect I can get that next cycle, and I don't really want to move past that on this track because I'd place a guild, and I have nowhere else to place guilds, and as I said, my own limitation, I am not going to take over any of these other sectors, so I won't have a place to put a guild if I were to be able to build one. So that's not super useful for me, so I'm going to save that track for later. And then on the society track, I just don't think the 1 credit and 1 science will be nearly as valuable as gaining that tech and that agenda. I really want to work towards those if I can, which I don't know how far I can make it. There's some limitations in the tutorial, so maybe I can't get that far, but I should at least be able to get the tech. So for the second action now on Reinforcement, I'm going to do muster. So I'm going to spend up to 2 material, but I'm actually going to spend credits. I've got 3. So I'm going to go down to 1 credit, and I can deploy 1 fleet power to each sector with a shipyard. So I have 2 sectors, each has 1 shipyard, so each can take 1 fleet power. So I've got these 2 cubes here. I'm going to need another Corvette fleet token there, and then another for the home sector. All right, that's looking pretty good. And that was 2 actions. So that was all 3 focus phases. So now we're going to go over to the evaluation phase, which starts with a skirmish. We're in cycle 1, so we look at our house mat. We have no corruption there, so the Voidborn are going to skirmish with a fleet power of 0, so we automatically win, and that's it. There's nothing else we need to do there. So the next step is we're going to take care of upkeep. So we have 2 upkeep to pay here on this agenda, plus another 1 2 for those filled guild sectors. So that's 4 upkeep in total. I have 6 food, so I'm going to pay the whole thing in food because that's pretty efficient. So we're down to 2 food. And now we check for the awards on the galactic event. So the first option was have 5 or more fleet power on your sectors. And I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. So I met that criteria. Or I can get a different bonus if I have at least 5 pure guilds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have that too. So I can choose which of these bonuses I want. So I can either raise 1 pure population and gain 1 credit and 1 science, or I can deploy 1 fleet power and gain 2 food. I feel like the first is stronger in this situation. I've got plenty of fleet power already out there, and because I'm not going to invade the rest of the game, I'm not really in any danger of losing any sectors. So the fleet power out there won't help me much. I've got 1 active one here that I can deactivate to pay a cost if I need to. And then the credit is pretty versatile. The science I would like to have as well. Whereas the food, I'm less concerned. I have more ways to get 2 food than I have ways to get credits in science. So I'll take that first one. I'm going to increase this population here to 3 from 2. So that makes all of these guilds, the level goes up by 1. So the Engineers Guild goes to a yield of 3. The Miners Guild is at level 2, so that goes to 3, which raises the yield to 2. And the Farmers Guild is at level 4, and now goes to level 5, which does not change the yield. In that case, it stays 3. If that just sounded like a bunch of numbers gibberish to you, don't worry about it. It'll make sense later. So now the last step is we're going to score our agendas, and we only have the 1. So first we get 3 influence for every pure sector. We have 2 pure sectors, so that's going to be 6 influence. So that brings us from 14 to 20. 1 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 sector defense. That's going to be just the 1 sector. So that's 1 influence. And then 2 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 pure shipyard. And we've got 2 of those. So another 4 influence gets us up to 25. So now we're going to get ready for cycle 2. So we're going to remove 1 trade token from the game and then remove this advanced or improved tech blocker. We're not going to worry about turn order. I'll always be first. And now we need a new galactic event. In the tutorial, that's going to be through enlightenment. So we will have 4 turns this cycle. So let's bring all my original cards back. So in cycle 2, we need to discard the following focus cards: production, progress, reinforcement, and temptation. So that's going to leave me with development, which I did play in cycle 1. Production and reinforcement were both in cycle 1. They're gone now. But I can play development again. I've also got conquest, politics, prosperity, and because we're in cycle 2, we now add innovation back in. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards, and we're going to be playing 4 of them. So now we have to decide which one of these we're going to forfeit for this cycle. So we'll get these out of here, take our cards, and now each player, which is just me, can activate 1 fleet power and take 1 basic tech. So I'm going to activate a fleet power and choose a basic tech. And today I think I'm going to go with Trade Nexus. So I need to gain 4 influence. So I'm up to 29. And then I also gain 2 food. So I go from 2 to 4 and a trade token. And now I can pick a reward from one of these. And I think I'm going to take 2 more food, so from 4 to 6. So that should really help me when it comes time to pay upkeep later, because I intend on getting some agendas. So I'm going to start off playing Innovation. It's a fantastic card. I would love to play the top action and use my trade token really to take all 3, but I think spending 2 food is kind of steep to produce science and credits in this case, because I only have the 1 scientist guild and it's only going to produce 1, and I have no bankers guilds. So I'd be spending 2 food to gain 1 science and 1 influence. I think at this point I'd rather have the 2 food. So I'm just going to take the bottom 2 actions. I'm going to start with Invent, which will cost 2 science. That brings me down to 0 science, and I can gain a tech. And I'm going to take Terraforming now. And this one also gives me 4 influence, so I go from 29 to 33. and I can increase 1 pure population or gain 2 materials. And you know what? Let's go for the population. So we'll turn this 3 into a 4. So the levels go up on food, energy, and materials. So food goes from 5 to 6, energy goes from 4 to 5, and materials goes from 3 to 4. Again, talking about the levels on the outside. So I can tuck this in, and that allows me to, when I do development or prosperity focus, spend 1 material to raise a pure population. And I guess I also didn't mention Trade Nexus allows me to gain the trade bonus when I return a trade token to the galactic board. So for my second action, I'm going to take this bottom one, consolidate, and I'm going to spend 1 food, 1 energy, and 1 material to gain an agenda card. And I want the might agenda that's face up right here, called Intensive Warfare. So that is in my hand. I'll flip the next one over. This is going to give me 6 influence each cycle. If I have 3 pure shipyards at the end of the cycle, and I've got 2 and room for another, so I feel pretty good about that. And then I also get 7 influence for every pure sector with 3 fleet power in it. So I've already got 1. If I can move this one over here and deploy 1 more, that can give me 14 influence. That'd be pretty great. But that's it for this round. So that was innovation, and I need to pick a new card. And so the second card I play is going to be prosperity, and I will pair it with this agenda I just got, so I can play the agenda as well. And I'm going to flip this trade token. So I'm going to take all 3 of these actions as well as the action on the agenda. And I'll start with this top action, flourish. So I'm going to spend 1 material, so I'm out of material now. And I get to advance the economy track. So it goes up to here, and this symbol, the reward I earn is to advance it again, which gets me here. So I get a trade token. And I'm just going to go ahead and slot it there immediately. And I can choose any of these rewards. I'm going to take 2 credits. So I go from 1 to 3. And now I'll take this agenda action. I'm going to take the one on the left, which is to raise my lowest track. So right now that's society. So I'm going to raise that up 1 space and gain 1 credit and 1 science. So I'm up to 4 credits and 1 science. So now I think I'll take this action here, store, and I'm kind of moving down the card, but of course you can take these in any order. For store, I can produce 1 of any resource, and I think it's going to be, food. Might be a little aggressive on the food, but I've got 5 and I have a yield of 4, so now my stockpile goes up to 9, and then I can gain 2 resources of any type. And I'm going to take 1 credit to get me up to 5 and 1 science to get me up to 2. And for the last action here, organize, I need to deactivate 1 fleet power and spend 1 energy from 2 to 1 and 1 material. I'm out of material, but I've got 5 credits, so I'll spend 1 of those instead. And now I can gain an agenda, and I can build an installation. So we'll start with the installation. I'm going to put a shipyard right here, because as I mentioned, that will help me with scoring later. And then I will take an agenda, and I'm going to take a support agenda, but I don't really want that one there. So let's take the top 2 and take a look at them. Oh, that one's going to work out okay. And I don't want that one. All right, so I'm keeping the Salvation Project. So this other one just goes on the bottom of the deck. So this one is in my hand. And now I've taken all 3 of these actions and this agenda action. And I have one more thing I can do. I have terraforming tech. So this is prosperity focus. So I can spend 1 material to raise a pure population. And again, I'm out of material, but I'll spend 1 credit. And I can raise this 4 up to a 5. And now all of those production levels go up. Maybe it would have made sense to do that before I produced, but that's okay. So now it's the end of the turn, so we're going to take this agenda and slot it right here. And this spent trade token goes back to the board. And because I have Trade Nexus, I can now take that bonus or any of the ones below it. I'll go ahead and take this one for 2 credits. So I go from 3 up to 5. And this is in my hand. So now I'm going to play the Conquest focus card, and I'll go ahead and pair it with this agenda that I just got. And I'm not going to flip a trade token this time, so only 2 of these actions plus the agenda. And I'll start with the agenda. I'm going to take this action on the left to activate 1 fleet power. And I can't really take this action on the right to build an installation because I have no more installation slots. So now I'll take this first action, engage. So spend 2 energy. I've got 1 energy, so I'll spend 1 and 1 credit, down to 4 credits. And I can either invade or I could regroup. And I said I'm not going to invade any sectors in this game, so I'm going to regroup. I'm just going to move this 1 fleet power over to this sector. And the reason for that is I am trying to get to where I can score this agenda here, where each peer sector with at least 3 fleet power gains you 7 influence. So I've already got 3 in this sector. I'm trying to get 3 in this one now. So for my next action, I will do this one, strategize, and that costs 1 energy and 1 credit. I have no energy, so I'm going to spend 2 credits. That gets me down to 2, and I can take an agenda card, and I can move 1 corruption. I have no corruption to move, so I'll just go ahead and take the agenda. And I don't really know what I'm going to use it for. It'll probably be in the next cycle, but I think there's a fair chance I'm going to want to play innovation again. I don't really want this one here, commercial syndicate, so let's take 2 off the top of this dominance agenda type. That would be okay. That would be all right. That's not going to happen. I'm probably better off with this one, high society. So that will give me 5 influence if I have at least 1 peer sector with 6 population, which I'm very close to having. And then it'll also be a multiplier for this track here, the civilization track, for influence for whatever tier that is in. Right now I'm in tier 0, so if I can get it up to here to tier 1, I can at least get 4 influence. So that's in my hand. And that's all I can do for this turn. So I'm going to slot this agenda. There we go. And I've played 3 cards. There are 4 cards for the cycle, so I've got to choose 1 more to play. So I'm going to play politics. And I won't use a trade token. So I'm going to take 2 actions this time. I'm going to start with this top one, inspire. So I'm going to spend 1 science. So I go from 2 to 1 to advance the statecraft track. So I go up to here, and now I can gain a tech. And this time I would like autonomous drones. I don't really plan on using the effect at all, but I gain 4 influence. So I go from 33 to 37. And then this is what I really wanted. I gain a trade token. So I'll put that right here on this agenda, and I can gain a reward for that. And I think I'm going to take 2 science. I don't need it now, but I will probably need it later. And I can also deploy 1 fleet power. So let's deploy 1 of my active fleet power to my home sector to get 3 fleet power in that sector. So we'll tuck that away now. And for my second action, I'm going to do the bottom one, which is control. So I'm going to spend 1 credit. So I'm down to 1 credit to gain a trade token and move a corruption. Again, I have no corruption to move, but I will gain a trade token. And that's going to go there. And I can take any of these again. I'm going to go for 2 credits this time. So that's pretty good value. So let's take a look now. I have played 1, 2, 3, 4 focus cards: innovation, prosperity, conquest, and politics. And there were 4 in the cycle. So that is going to be the end of this cycle. This again is still in my hand. Let me move it over. So now we move on to the evaluation phase, and we are in cycle 2. So the Voidborn are going to get 1 extra fleet power when they invade. So looking at my house mat, I have no corruption here. So I have 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. So the Voidborn are going to invade with 1. The only valid target, so the only sector I have that is adjacent to a Voidborn sector and eligible to be invaded, is this one. This one cannot be invaded because it's my home sector, but they are both adjacent to Voidborn sectors. So the Voidborn invade here, and again, when they invade, just imagine they're coming from the z-axis. They're coming down. You don't move any fleet power around the map. So they're invading here with 1 grand total fleet power, and that's going to get destroyed on the way in by that sector defense. So I win. And winning's great. So now we're going to move on to the next step. We have to pay for upkeep. I don't have any upkeep for these agendas down here because they all have trade tokens on them. So I just have to pay this 1, 2, 3 for having these full guild slots and this full installation sector. So I'm going to pay 3 food. I go from 9 down to 6. No big deal. And now if we look at the galactic event, there were 2 things to try and achieve. I don't think I pointed this out, but you either want to try and have 9 or more pure population, and then you can activate a fleet power and get a tech, or you want 3 or more techs, and then you can activate a fleet power and increase the population. So I only have 7 pure population. I'm not eligible to take the top one, but I can take the bottom because I have 4 techs and you only need 3. So I could activate a fleet power and increase 1 pure population, and I think it'll be this one right here, which is going to go from 5 to 6. So now I can raise those levels again. Okay. Now it's time to score all of our pure agendas. And they're all pure, which is great. So we'll just go left to right. We'll start with the starting agenda. 3 influence for each pure sector. I've got 2 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm up to 43. 1 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 sector defense. I've just got 1 of those. And 2 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 shipyard. So 1, 2. It doesn't matter that it's got more than 1, it's just at least 1. So I get 2 influence for each of those sectors, which brings me to 48. Now, intensive warfare, which was the might agenda I played, you get 6 influence if you have at least 3 pure shipyards. So in this case, this does count as 2. So 1, 2, 3 shipyards. So I get 6 influence. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That gets me up to 54. And then 7 influence for each pure sector with at least 3 fleet power. These are both pure sectors, 3 fleet power here, 3 fleet power here. That's going to be 14 influence. Gets me to 68. Now I get on the Salvation Project, which was the support agenda I played, 7 influence if you have 0 corrupted sectors, and I have no corrupted sectors, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 influence. That gets me to 75. And then 4 influence for each sector I have with no empty guild slots. So I have 2 sectors with no empty guild slots, so that's 8 influence. 83. Well on our way to 120, and that's the end of the cycle. So let's get ready for cycle 3. So the first thing we need to do is remove this trade token from the game. Then we refresh these techs. So these are all gone. And the other 4 improved techs will go here. So we have sentries, dreadnoughts, deep space missiles, and trade nexus. At the moment, trade nexus is the only one I could, in theory, acquire because I have the basic version, but I have not unlocked any advanced technologies yet or improved technologies, so I couldn't really get any. Now, we're not going to change the turn order, but we are going to get the new galactic event, and this is Redemption Awaits. So we will have 5 turns this cycle, and the only thing it tells you to do is discard the Temptation Focus card. So this one's been discarded all 3 times. You never use this in the tutorial, but all other focus cards are now in your hand, so you're going to have 8 focus cards in no particular order: Reinforcement, Progress, Production, Politics, Conquest, Prosperity, Innovation, and what's stuck together? It was off to the side. Development. So we've got 8 cards that we can play. So next, each player, which is just me, can either take an agenda or advance any one track. Now, I think I'm going to advance a track because I already have 3 agendas slotted and 1 more in hand that I intend to slot, and I'm pretty happy with these. So I don't think I'm going to be cycling through these agendas trying to replace any of them. I might take some just out of happenstance to get the actions. But I think what I really want to do is advance a track. And I'm going to advance the statecraft track, which, funny enough, will give me the ability to take a new agenda. But before I take the agenda, I want to kind of explain why I chose that. So I looked ahead a little bit just at these 2 goals for this galactic cycle. So the first is to try and have 8 or more pure guilds. Now I've got 5 and all my guild slots are full. And again, this is just a silly restriction I put on myself for fun. I'm not going to take over any other sector. So I will never be able to have 8 guilds. There's no technologies. There's nothing in this game that's going to allow me to do that in the tutorial. But the second part is have at least 1 of these civilization tracks that's pure and at least tier 2. This is tier 2 here. From this space, I can get statecraft into tier 2. From this space, I'll never get society into tier 2. So that's why I want to move that one. And that being said, the agenda I have not played is going to score for this pure sector with 6 population, and then it'll score on a multiplier based off of these this society track, which is not going to be super high. I'm kind of aiming for statecraft now. So I think I'm going to take another dominance agenda. The one on top scores for the econ track, so I'm going to cycle the top 2 and hopefully get one that will score for statecraft. And again, I'm taking the agenda not because of this. This allowed me to advance the track, and now this allows me to take the agenda. And yep, there's what I'm looking for. So which one of these do I think is going to score better? They both have statecraft. This one will give me 5 influence if I get statecraft to tier 2, which is what I'm currently aiming for. And then 1 influence for every 2 basic resources that I have when it's time to score. So that's food, material, and energy. Whereas this one will score as a multiplier for my statecraft track. And then 4 influence if I have at least 2 sectors with 5 population, which means I would have to increase this population 3 times. That's kind of a tall order, but I think I can do it, and I think the chances are I'll score more on this one, as long as I can get both of those population up to 5. In order to score well on this one, I'm going to have a lot of leftover resources, and I think I'm going to play it a little tighter than that. So I'm going to put this one back. Hopefully that's the right choice. This plan seems more clear to me. So in hand, I have 2 of these dominance agendas, which can only be played with innovation and temptation. And there is no temptation in this cycle, so I'm only going to be able to play one of those. So now I've got 5 turns, 8 cards in hand. Let's pick the first card. All right, so I'm going to start with innovation, and I'm going to play that with this new agenda, Federal Authority, just to get it into play. So I'm going to start with this middle action, Invent. I'm going to spend 2 science, so I go from 3 down to 1, which makes me a little nervous, but I gain a tech, and I'm going to gain deep space missiles. And it's kind of silly at this point, but really, this tech only helps you as an invader, or when you play Prosperity Focus, you can build shipyards. I have nowhere to build a shipyard, and I don't intend to invade. But out of all the techs there, this one gives me 4 influence. And of the others that give you 4 influence, this one also allows me to build a shipyard, which I cannot do, and gives me 2 energy. So I wanted 4 influence and whatever else I could get with that. 2 energy was my best option. These 3 remaining on the bottom have no influence, and this one allows you to build a sector defense and deploy a sentry to your home sector. And I don't really need to do that and can't build the sector defense anyway. Sorry about that. Got a little interrupted again, so let's reshoot that last step. So I just slotted the tech, and now I get to pick one of these other actions, and I'm going to pick this bottom one, Consolidate. So I'm going to spend 1 food, 1 energy, and 1 material, which I don't have, so I'll spend a credit to gain an agenda. Now again, I said I didn't really want to dig through the agenda deck, but here I sort of go. I am going to take a might agenda, and the one on top is not better than the might agenda that I have. So I'm going to take the next 2. I don't know that either of these will be better, but I'll at least take a look. No, neither of these are better, so I'll just take this one, put this one on the bottom of the deck. So I'm going to use the agenda card for its action when I have the opportunity, but I'm not going to slot it. I'm not going to replace the one that I have. So I've taken 2 actions here, and I've got this agenda that I played, and I'm not going to take this invade action. So I'm just going to slot this agenda, and that was the second card of the cycle. I'm sorry, that was the first card of the cycle. So now I need to pick a second. So for the second card, I'm going to play Prosperity, and I will pair it with that agenda that I just picked up, this one here. And I'm going to take the agenda action first. I'm going to take the action on the left. This is the only agenda that has an or type of action. So I don't really want to take a trade token because I have as many as I can get. So instead, I'm going to take this action on the left, advance my lowest track, which is my society track. So that goes up 1, which allows me to increase a pure population. So this one will go from 2 to 3. So now I gain 1 level on my food production and 1 level on science. So if I happen to produce science, I'll produce 2 now instead of 1, but I don't think I'll be producing science. So now I'll take this action here, store, so I can produce 1 resource type, and I'm going to produce materials. So I have 0 now, my yield is 4, so now I have 4 materials, plus I get 2 resources of my choice, and I'm going to take 1 science and 1 credit. Now, because I have Prosperity Focus, I can take this technology action. I'm going to spend 1 material, which I now have, to increase 1 pure population. So my home sector is going to go from 3 to 4. And so I can raise food production 1 level and science production 1 level again. So I've done the agenda action, I've done store, I've done this tech action. Now I'm going to take this bottom action, organize. I'm going to deactivate 1 fleet power and spend 1 energy and 1 material. So I'm out of energy now. I have 2 material, and I can gain agenda and build an installation. I have nowhere to build an installation, but we'll take an agenda. I'm going to take this wealth type, again, probably just for the action. So let's see. This one, I can already calculate. If you have at least 4 technologies, which I do, you get 4 influence. And if you have 2 pure sectors, for every 2 pure sectors, you gain 5 influence. So this would be a total of 9. So we can calculate when the time comes if that's going to beat any of these 3. I don't think it will. This one scores you 4 influence if you have at least 3 glory tokens. I only have the 1, and I'm not going to get any others. And 4 influence for every 3 credits in your stockpile. And I have no way to produce credits, so that one's definitely not going to be useful to me. So this will go on the bottom of the stack. This will go in my hand. I probably won't slot it, but I still will play it at some point. So that's all the actions I can take, everything I can do. And when I compare this might agenda to this one, I would rather keep the one I have slotted. So this one I'm just going to discard, put it on the bottom, oopsie, of the stack on the agenda offer. So that's 2 focus cards. Let's play a third. And third is going to be development, and I will pair it with that agenda card that I just picked up. So the top 2 actions here, I don't really want to do any of that because they only let you build guilds and or installations, and I have no place to do any of that. But I do want to take this bottom action. I'm going to spend 1 science, so I go from 2 to 1, to increase 1 pure population or remove a corruption. I have no corruption, but I will increase a pure population. And I'm going to do this one here. That was a little bit superfluous too. That was kind of just for fun. So I raise these levels because this is development focus. And so using the terraforming tech, I can pay 1 material to raise 1 pure population. So I needed sectors with 5. But I managed to get it to 6. So why not get it to 6? And then I might as well take this agenda action. So it allows you to build a guild and or produce any resource type. If you choose to do both actions, you must produce the same resource type as the guild you just placed. I have nowhere to place a guild. This one's fallen off though. I have nowhere to place a guild, so I can just produce any one resource type that I choose. And I'm going to choose to produce food. So I have 5 in the stockpile and I produce 12. So that would get me up to 17. But the limit is 15. So I've overproduced. So when you overproduce, you gain 3 influence. So that gets me to 90. And so I do have another action available, but I'm not going to take any. I don't think it'd be beneficial. So we're going to go ahead and finish this focus card a little early. And I don't think it makes sense for me to keep this agenda. It's not going to score as well as the agendas that I have. So I'm going to get rid of it. And I can play another focus card now for those keeping track. I've played 3. There are 5 in this cycle, so I get 2 more to play. And the next one I'm going to play is politics. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this inspire action on the top. I'm going to spend 1 science, so I'm down to 0 science now, to advance 1 track or to advance the statecraft track. So I will do that. The reward for that is to remove a corruption. I don't have any corruption to remove. And I would really love to take the bottom action to spend 1 credit to take a trade token, but there's no trade token left to take, so that would be kind of a silly thing to do. It would have been nice to cover up this last agenda so I didn't have to pay the upkeep on it. And I'm not going to invade. There's no benefit to turning this glory token from a 2 to a 3, so I'm just going to skip the last action available as well, which feels pretty inefficient that I'm skipping all these actions, but I think it's the course that I want to take. So I've got 1 more card to play, and I'm going to play reinforcement. So I want to take this top action, accelerate. I'm going to deactivate 1 fleet power, and I can build a sector defense, but I have nowhere that I can build that. And I can also advance 1 track of my choice. It's going to be the statecraft track right here to get into tier 2. And the reward for that is I can take a tech. I am going to take the improved version of my starting tech, shields, which I haven't really needed. Don't anticipate needing, but I get 6 influence for it. So now I'm up to 96. There's no other bonus for that tech. And I can slot that probably better. There we go. I have no need to muster because I have no fleet power to deploy and really no reason to do it. And I don't need to mobilize either because I have nowhere to build a sector defense and I don't have any reason to regroup my fleets. So I'm going to forfeit the last action again. So that should be the 5th card of the cycle. Innovation, prosperity, development, politics, reinforcement. 5 cards this cycle. So now we go into the evaluation phase. We start with the skirmish. I have 0 corruption on my house mat. We get 1 additional Voidborn fleet power in cycle 3. So the Voidborn will skirmish with a total of 1. Now, just like at the end of last cycle, this is the only place they can go, and the sector defense takes out that Voidborn fleet power before it can do anything, so I win the skirmish. Next, it's time to pay for upkeep. I have 3 agendas down here with trade tokens on them, so I have 2 upkeep for this last one, plus 1, 2, 3 upkeep for the guilds and the installations. That's a total of 5 upkeep. That'll all come out of food, so my food stockpile goes down to 10. And all upkeep is satisfied. So now I look at the galactic event. I knew going in I was never going to have 8 pure guilds, but I have achieved getting a pure civilization track up to tier 2. This statecraft one is in tier 2 right now, and it's pure, so the reward for that is 15 influence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm at 101. Now I can go ahead and score all of my pure agendas, which is all 4 agendas. So let's go from left to right. All right, 3 influence for each pure sector. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 sector defense. That's just going to be 1. 2 influence for each pure sector with at least 1 shipyard. 1, 2. 1, 2. Intensive warfare is next. I get 6 influence if I have at least 3 pure shipyards, which I do. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 7 influence for each pure sector with at least 3 fleet power. I have 2 of those sectors. That's going to be 14 influence. 3, 4. There we go. Now it's the Salvation Project, which is the support agenda. If I have 0 corruption on my sectors, which is currently the case, I get 7 influence. There we go. And for each sector I have with no available guild slots, no empty guild slots, I get 4 influence. So it's going to be 8 total. And then this last agenda that I just slotted this 3rd cycle, Federal Authority, that was the dominance agenda type. If I have 2 pure sectors with at least 5 population, which I do, gain 4 influence. And then whatever my statecraft track is, whatever tier that is, multiply that by 4. So I'm in tier 2. 2 times 4 is 8. Or at least it was when I was in 3rd grade, so I assume that hasn't changed. And that is all of my agendas. So I am done scoring. Just remember that this agenda over here was in my hand. I never actually played it, so let's just get rid of it so we're not confused. So again, the goal of the tutorial is to try and get 120 influence by the end. My grand total this time with House Valnis was 159, and I was able to do that with just the 2 sectors that I start in without invading and expanding at all, which is pretty restrictive. So it's not like that's the highest score in the world, but I thought that was kind of just a fun thing to do for me, and hopefully it showed you some of the flexibility that you can have in this game and some of the different paths you can take to trying to achieve some of your goals as you play. So let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. And if you have any requests for future Voidfall games on this channel, let me know. I do take requests. I can't promise that I'll win or even that I'll attempt an effective strategy, but if nothing else, you can learn from my mistakes. But I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. If you're still here, please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. I always appreciate those things. And I might as well plug one more time if you are interested in any of the 3D printed pieces that we've got here. So the fleet tokens, guilds, installations, glory tokens, bounty tokens, reclaim tokens, the agenda and tech trays, plus a bunch of other things that aren't visible here. Feel free to go to the Etsy store, Brain Bucket Games. You can find a link in the description. I'm here to tell you that it's high quality stuff. That's why I use it. So this has been the Voidfall solo tutorial with Valnis with my own special extra restriction on it. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching Table for One.